My ex has cheated probably 15 times. We have a son. Says he has changed after 2 years of cheating on me. I feel trapped. What should I do? Embarrassed to post this. I know it's long. Please be kind. I've never told anyone the extent of my ex's cheating. Family thinks we should go to counseling and give it a shot. I just want what's best for my son. Thanks in advance. We met on Tinder. He lived 45 minutes away from me, and we hung out, partied, hooked up every weekend for about 6 months. He would tell me he loved me when he was drunk. We actually got into a real relationship when his long-distance girlfriend messaged me. He had been with her the entire time, even went to go see her when we were talking, and told her I was his buddy's girlfriend since I was around so much. He immediately broke up with her once he was caught. Told me he loved me, didn't know how to break it off with her. We started dating. A month or 2 later, I found him Skyping someone wearing my clothes and watching trans material. He told me he did it because he never was able to tell anyone about this other side of his sexuality. He was embarrassed, obviously. I was caught so off guard. But felt bad he could be open and tried to accept him instead. Our ex-life just got a little wild after, and we tried a lot. We had a great few more months in which he told me he wanted to have a baby with me. He wanted a family and to settle down from our partying lifestyle. He said he wasn't ready to get married. He had already been married and divorced by 20 because of the military and didn't want the same thing to happen. I got pregnant. We were both happy. He wanted to get pregnant. I think he was faithful for a few months. However, his partying never stopped and cheating got worse. I was 5 months pregnant and sleeping in his bed while he was up drinking with friends. Woke up, looked out the window to him kissing a girl who saw him kissing on me and my belly before I went to bed. I threw a huge scene, yelled at him and her, and left. I didn't hear from him for a day. His friends lied for him and said he was sleeping depressed all day, when I later found out he was day drinking and got another girl's number. He started texting me after that, saying he was so sorry. Was gonna stop drinking because he had an alcohol problem and that's why he did it. For days later, woke up to a text from him that said I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about you and our son all night. Seconds later, found out he had a huge 4th of July party and had the same girl he cheated on me with over and had sex with her. He denied it and even had the girl text me and lie for him. I called her out and she told me the truth and that she had even stayed there the first time. I was 5 months pregnant. 25 years old. We were about to move in together. He is in the military and was about to be stationed across the world after our son was born. My parents passed away when I was 18 and 20. I was completely alone and I stayed. The rest of my pregnancy he was sting people pretty much any way he could. I found messages of him messaging a trans prostitute he previously hooked up with to meet up in exchange for money. He hid girls in his phone under guys' names and was sting them. Sting old women. Even on FB. I was 38 weeks pregnant. He was at some house party lying about it. I had to drive to his location and found him talking with 2 girls. He kept saying he had a drinking problem or blaming it on his sexuality every time, or that he wasn't ready and was scared to have our son. We had, and he was back to drinking until 5 a.m. with his buddies when our son was 10 days old. Then our son could have died when he was 12 days old when he got bit in the head by my ex's husky. We were in the children's hospital for a week and by some miracle he is absolutely fine now. I thought it would be a wake-up call to him for us. We were holding each other, screaming, crying, etc. I found out when our son was about 2 months he had another dating app on his phone he was sting people on. Messages only went back for a month, so I'm not sure how long. But he was sting people at the children's hospital. Found messages of him inviting people to the hospital to have sex, but he says it never happened. Found more messages of him telling people what general area we lived in together and saying he wanted to have sex. I say people because it was women and trans women. He said it was because we hadn't had sex in months. The last 2 we couldn't, considering I just had a baby. I tried to leave. I knew this was enough. But his family was in town and he told them I was going to run away with his son, who he only had 2 more months with before he was stationed overseas. I was planning to stay in the area for those months and then move to California, where I had my closest family, aunts and uncles, to help me when he moved. I was conned into giving him another chance because of our son. That he deserved to be in his life. I had all of my belongings packed up by the military to go to his station overseas, as well as his follow-on, which is also overseas. I broke my lease, quit my job, and took a car load across the country to live with his family for a month before he moved. When he got there, he was supposed to find us a house off base, since we aren't married. I was sent his Tinder a week later. He got a Tinder the day he got to Korea. I broke up with him. Took all I had, 2 suitcases and my son, and flew to California when my son was 5 months old. I lived with my aunt and uncle for 3 months. They helped me get a job. I found an apartment. I got all my furniture secondhand slowly, and I finally started all over. Of course, my ex was saying he was so sorry. How he had a problem. How he was going to get help. How he didn't want our son's life to end up broken like his parents got divorced when he was 7 because of infidelity. His mom remarried and forgot him, and his dad was a bachelor and got married another 6 times. He would tell me if we weren't together he wanted our son when he was at his next station overseas, and our son was 1.5, and he hadn't seen him since he was 4 months old. For half the year. So I try and say I was receptive to him working to change. He lied for about 8 months saying this. Saying he wasn't hooking up with anyone. In which I found him on Tinder again twice. He said I wasn't giving him anything. We did this back and forth thing for months. I finally gave him a real chance again, trying to actually talk to him every day, and he receptive. I don't know why. I found videos of him having sex with a trans woman this time. He would literally tell me over FaceTime that there was no way he could be doing that. When I brought it up, he was on 2-week deployment at the time. I found out he had sex with her 4 times in that 2 weeks. And he told me he had sex with 2 other trans women in Korea. He pretty much used the time away to be single and party, and do whatever he wanted, which is fine. But he was lying, trying to get me back and make sure I didn't move on the whole time. I told him not to contact me anymore, and we set up weekly feet appointments to see his son. This went on for about 2 months. He started saying I was keeping his son from him, but could never keep it just about our son. When he called, just kept talking about our relationship and how he wanted to be together, and he ducked up. Started saying how he was suicidal and didn't want to be here if he couldn't have us, stuff like that. And he bought a plane flight here to the States from Korea. I hadn't seen him in 8 months. Our son was a year old. Then he told everyone I was horrible because I wouldn't let him stay with us. He comes here and I keep my distance and make him get an Airbnb. But he works his charm. He says he spent the last 2 months getting right and talking to people, and he is a changed person and doesn't want that lifestyle anymore. That he didn't know what he wanted and was keeping me around, which was wrong, but will do anything to have me back. Says our son is too old now, he can't not be in his life. Wants to go to counseling. BD totally open and committed. Zuli. Bought me a ring to show he wanted commitment, and it was different this time. Was the dad of the year and helped out in all the ways he didn't before. I ended up having sex with him and enjoying our time. I feel ducking crazy. I don't know how to get out. In the past, if I try, he turns ugly, and how do I co-parent with that for our son? Or now he begs and pleads and says he is different and begs for another chance, and says this time is truly different. I'm at such a loss. Our son is 14 months now, and my ex will be stationed overseas until he is 4.5 years old. Can people like this really change? Or is he a narcissist and I an idiot? Help me please. Wow, he is vile. Should have left when you found out you were the other woman at the beginning. Love my son, but definitely wish I would've. Then leave now. He want change. By staying, you're teaching your son that people can do these things without consequences. He says he will tell my son one day that I kept him from him. That he deserves a chance, and it isn't fair because he won't get to see our son grow up. Thinks it's okay for a 2, 3, 4-year-old to be in another country with him when he doesn't know him. Puts it all on me that he won't get the chance to be there, and says he wants to kill himself, or gets mad because I've been leading him, and when I tell him I don't think I want to do this anymore. Date and email this post to yourself. If in the future if he tries to tell your son lies. Have your son read this entire entry. And do not tell your ex that you have a detailed account of his actions for your relationship. You know what he is saying are pure manipulations and lies. So why are you allowing him to get into your head and doubt yourself? I have to say, the one good souled thing you've done since you met him on Tinder was take your baby to California and get yourself back on your own 2 feet. You are allowing this scumbag to demolish all of your hard work. Why? You know how hard it was for you to get yourself together. Stop letting him mind duck you into bad decisions like he's been doing for your entire relationship. Look up the term gray rock method and use it on your ex. Second story. Wife of 6 years slept with another guy behind my back. I met my wife in an online book club about 10 years ago. At that time, I did not know anything about her beside the book she was reading. Found out that she was going through chemo radiation for stage 4 metastatic cancer, so I messaged a couple of guys in the group asking if they are willing to send me small gifts so I can organize a care package for her. She received the package in the mail and was so happy, thankful, and appreciative. We started to message each other privately, became friends, and eventually it blossomed into a long-distance relationship. I continue to send her letters and small gifts which she would open after every chemo appointment until she finally went into remission. We lived 1,000 miles apart. I flew to visit her. She flew to visit me. After all the back and forth, she eventually moved to my state. We bought a house together in 2015. Got engaged the same year. And got married in 2016. On the surface, it was a great marriage. We had one argument in the entire 6 years of marriage. I was making good money, which gave her the opportunity to land her dream job, which she still holds today. We had a great income and no kids. Remove the stressor of money and kids out of marriage, and there is little left to argue about. If we had disagreements, we resolved them within hours or so. We thought I will expand on this later. In 2020, we sold our house and moved 1,000 miles to live closer to her family. She had a hysterectomy in May 2021 for chronic bleeding, required 2 units of blood prior to surgery because her hemoglobin was critically low. I was fully supportive of her. She took 12 weeks off work to recover. I took 6 weeks off work to care for her. The surgeon cleared her to return to work after 6 weeks, but I was supportive of and encouraged her to take the full 12 weeks off to recover. After I returned to work and a week before she was scheduled to work, she flew out of state to see her female friend and co-worker. During that stay, she had sex with another man with whom she was having an emotional affair with for months. I don't know if I was the first person she had sexual experience with post-surgery or if it was him. He knew that she was married. How I discovered the cheating was completely by accident. Last weekend, she was out of town for a conference. A couple of things which in retrospect had no direct relation to the affair occurred that gave me a bad feeling in the gut, and I went through her computer for the first time in our marriage. I saw the explicit texts and photos. I picked her up at the airport, drove her to her house, parked in the driveway, turned to her, and said, "Look at me. I know everything. I know that you've been cheating on me. I have seen the photos and text messages. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to go inside and grab your essentials. You can go stay with your parents or friends. The next time you will hear from me will be through my divorce lawyer." She did not deny anything. She was walking through the house to pick up her belongings. I was walking behind her because it felt like a stranger was walking in my house and going through our belongings. I never raised my voice or my hand at her, just like during our 6 years of marriage during the entire process. After she left, I turned on the alarm system and stacked chairs again the front door. I was afraid that she'd come back if I fell asleep. It felt like an intruder was breaking into my house. I slept for a total of 50 minutes during that last 24 hours. After she left, my intention was to call a divorce lawyer the next day. I could not get a day off from my work. I texted her to come to the house. The title is in both of our names, so I was not legally allowed to kick her out before I left for work. I wanted to make sure that she was not going to do anything crazy in the house alone. We agreed to talk after I returned from work. We talked for 2 days in a row. There was a lot of crying from both of us. What looked like a great marriage on a surface was marred by the lack of communication for 6 years from both of us. We both avoided conflict and instead chose to bottle in our feelings. We learned more about each other in 2 days than we did over the course of the entire marriage. While she was away on her conference trip, I drove 1.5 hours to help her 90-year-old grandfather get out of bed, provide incontinence care, toilet him, help with breakfast, and give medication. This was the second time in 2 weeks. She texted me how much she loved me and how she appreciated what I was doing for her grandfather. She claims that she was going to break up with me after returning from the conference. Break up under the guise of falling out of love with me and not mention the infidelity to avoid hurting me. I honestly don't believe her and have a strong feeling that she'd have continued to string me along. Every single issue could have been resolved if each one of us put in just a little bit more effort. While we shared some common interests, we could not relate to the interests which were most important to each one of us. On the first day, I blamed her entirely. On the following day, I started to blame myself for not being an attentive husband. After working from home all day, all she wanted to do was talk to me after I came home from work. I just wanted peace and silence after slaving away for 12 hours. She wanted to talk about social and personal issues which were important to her. But I did not even offer a listening ear because I could not relate to her experience. This is just a couple of examples. There are dozens of others. And I don't claim to have been a perfect husband. I have my faults. But I genuinely tried to make her happy. At least as much and in ways I could. I found her at the lowest point in her life, overwhelming previous marriage. Cancer. Anxiety. Depression. Seizures. And future alcohol overtaking. Excluding the affair. We will be getting divorced at the highest point in her life. She is in cancer remission. Abstinent from alcohol for 1.5 years. No seizures for 3+ years. Her anxiety depression are better controlled. Has a great group of friends and family who live close by. And I am at my lowest point now. I uprooted my life for her after the move and have no local support. I haven't told my parents because they will be devastated. I am afraid that the news will send both of them to the hospital because they loved her so much. We are currently living as roommates, friends in our house. We have agreed to make the divorce and transition as smooth as possible for both of us, even if it takes months. She offered for me to keep the house, take the newer car, keep both of our cats, etc. I can see how remorseful she is. Yesterday, we attended a virtual Al-Anon for family meeting therapy for family members of alcoholics. What resonated with me was that family members should not blame themselves for the behavior of alcoholics. I feel like I am blaming myself for my wife's infidelity when I am the actual victim here. I am here for support from others who've gone through similar experiences. I'll need to learn to trust my future partner when the person whom I had complete trust in blindsided me like this. My first session with Infidelity Survivors Anonymous is this Saturday. Thank you for letting me vent. Edit. I will add this detail for some context and not to excuse or give a legitimate reason for her to cheat. She was my first serious relationship. I had a couple of flings before her. But that did not progress to anything more serious because of a problem I had. Eating disorder, and while we had a spicy ex-life when we were in long-distance relationship. Once we started living together, the problem returned. At one point early in the relationship, we went many months without having sex. She begged me to see a doctor, but I kept putting it off. Entirely my fault. I was younger, less mature, and frankly embarrassed. Eventually, at age 29, I am 33 now. I got tested and found out I had very low testosterone level. And I don't know how many years I've lived this way. Probably a decade, because I always felt like I had less energy than my peers. I received T replacement at that time and felt like a new man. We started having sex again, but admittedly it was never as good as it was in long-distance relationship and never lived up to the fantasy we had prior to living together. There were still times when I couldn't stay hard, though they were much less frequent than before. She did say yesterday that while the sex was less frequent, she did enjoy it when we did have it. What I lacked in one area, I made up for it in another area, getting her oral, which she loved. And vice versa. Recently I started to feel like my T levels were low again. Now more mature. I went to get tested and have a follow-up visit next week for results. Again. This is not to minimize her infidelity. But if I talk about her flaws, it's only fair that I mention my own to paint the complete picture. Too long didn't read. We had a great 6-year marriage on the surface. But we chose to bottle in our feelings and avoid confrontation rather than communicate. She cheated on me with another guy, and we are now getting divorced. You both haven't communicated properly. That happened, but I guarantee you that this was not the reason for her cheating on you. She made this mistake just as much as you, and you know what? You haven't cheated on her. Why? Because you respected her, wanted to be with her, and most of all, she meant so much to you, as that you didn't want to hurt her in such disrespectful way. But your wife isn't like you. She didn't care about you or how much she would hurt you by cheating on you. She doesn't love you like you love her. The cheating was more important to her. Her cheating didn't happen because of attention issues or because you haven't communicated properly. It only happened because she wanted to cheat on you. That is the only reason. She made a decision that cheating on you is more important for her than your marriage and stick to that decision. Nothing of that all is on you. You and her had options, and while you made the choice to cherish her even though the marriage wasn't perfect, she made the choice to cheat. This is all about decision making. Nothing else. Please stay away from alcohol and drugs. They won't help you. Go to a doctor and get tested for STDs. Better safe than sorry. Ask her to leave the house and stay somewhere else since you need time on your own to process what she did and to start leaving her behind. Ignore all her attempts to speak with you unless it is about splitting up the assets. You need to distance yourself physically and emotionally away from her as much as possible. Ask her to only communicate with you by mail. The less contact you have with her, the better you can start to leave her behind. Talk to someone you trust, a dear friend or someone else, and ask them for support. Meet with a lawyer as soon as you can and prepare your exit strategy. You are worth so much more than to be treated this way. She doesn't deserve it to have such a great partner like you in her life. Edit. Regarding what you wrote, where you both are in life right now. She may be at her highest point right now, but from now on her next downfall will begin. The only way for her forward will be downwards. She will probably start to drink again and get into the next overwhelming or codependent relationship. Latest in a year she will realize that she lost the best thing that ever happened to her. You on the other hand are at your lowest right now. Hurt and betrayed. But from here on forward you will get better. Your only way forward will be upwards, and if you take good care of yourself right now, then you will realize soon that you are doing so much better, but with a wife by your side that treats you like she did. Hit like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing to our channel.